Hey, welcome to part 2 of building a e-commerce color search tool with Node.js and React. So in part 1 we went over the server-side logic. Kind of, I supplied a link to some images, and we were building the back-end part of a color picker. And yep, I had an example file here that you can download a zip file that just has a bunch of images in it, and we're going to use those just as an example for our software to work off of. And we came up with a color palette, and we came up with the logic, and we ended up basically with output that looks like this. This is what you get for each image. You get an output that picks every color in that palette and gives it a score on 1 to 100. So it's basically what percentage, and this one happens to come in at 100% red. So we can use all this data because it associates back to, in this case it goes back to the file name, but in your app it'd go back to an ID because you'd probably be using a database, not JSON files. It's just quicker and easier to show the concept by using the JSON files like this. But in any event, we've got all this data now for those images, and I think there was maybe 100 or so images, maybe a little more, I cannot quite remember. And I've built for part 2, we're going to build the front end that accompanies that, where you can actually select the color. And I'll show you a semi-working example at one of these. This is just a site that's sort of like it's password protected. It's live online, but it's more like a playground or experimental site for some of the stuff I work on. And this is the color tool I've got on there, where it's working off. I think I've got maybe 13,000 images on here, and you can actually pick multiple colors, and it'll analyze it like that, and you can adjust the levels of the colors and whatnot. So 335. Now you've got 659, but it does sort them from highest concentration to lowest. So basically, it's not going to change what you see, it's just going to add more to the list. But in any event, you can adjust those levels. It might work better with something that comes in at a lower level. So if we lower our red requirement, do we get any more? Okay, there we go. So there, adjusting it gets you more, because you are able to set thresholds, but we aren't getting this complicated in our example app, which I built on Code Sandbox, where you can just play around with code and bootstrap stuff real quick. So it's not really styled very well or anything like that. It's more just to show you a good starting point for something like this. And basically, it's going to show you and show you how to sort based on, just clicking one of these, and it's going to give you the level of the color that our backend tool recorded. And some came up with none, and that's okay, because we just picked a bunch of different colors to use. But as you can see, So here's a decent example. You could even probably have another shade of blue. It all depends how down in the details you want to get. But for the most part, it does a pretty good job of categorizing things by their color, as you can see. And it'll give you just the human readable name down here. And when you have like hundreds of thousands of products, you can see how this would work really well. And you can always refine it from this point. And so basically I just added Bootstrap just for styling, but it's just a basic React application. See, I did throw some mobile styles on there, but I didn't throw any tablet styles on there. But basically, just to walk through the logic, I brought in to the public folder. I brought in all the images because they're not hosted anywhere that's accessible online, so you have to load them from the file system. So, but you were allowed to do that here, and I just put those in the public folder. And this is just basically you create a new project using basically like a React template, and it basically gives you the public folder and app.js, index.js, your package JSON already all set. So it's a real quick way to just play around with stuff. So then all we're looking at essentially here is setting the color to state. And we've got our images in there, and then we've got our data. This is what our data look like. You get your color analysis and the relative path, and of course that file name is going to match up with the images in the folder, so we can tie this data to that actual image. And then the other piece of data we brought in is our palette, which I actually added 4 new colors to. Some of the lighter colors were getting assigned to white, this light blue, this like light purple, and they are almost white. That's why. But you can see you can add just as many colors as you can think of to this, and it all depends on your use case. But I did want to just see if I added a couple more, would I get them to not show up in white? And I did this one, and these 2 were all showing up under white, and this one still does. I think I set the threshold at like 25, so if it has a score of 25 for an individual color, it'll show up. It'll show up in the list. So this scored a 47, and then a 28, so it's in both lists. And so I got that palette data, and that's what I used to build that portion of the app. So basically, yeah, right here, I map over that palette data and just convert the RGB values to an RGB color string on a style tag, and set the color name on click. And so this color value ends up being blue or black or coral or burgundy or whatever the case may be. And then I use a chain of just regular JavaScript array methods to filter the data, and then only pulling those images. So basically the first function it goes through is the filter function, and if there is a color state, then I start doing logic. Otherwise I just return true. If you return true to a filter function, it returns everything, so it's as if it's not filtering at all. And then when there is a color, I only return true if that color level is above 25. So basically, the element, each individual element is getting passed in as X. As it maps over it, you can, instead of doing the function down here and jumbling up your JSX, kind of extract the function up here to kind of make it a little bit easier to deal with each portion of it without it getting too crazy. And then you just do x.color analysis and find that color, whatever the state happens to be. If it's black, find the value of the color analysis for black on that element. You know, so it's going to look up, this here is the element it's looking at, and then I narrow down to, oh, let's look at the color analysis. Oh, let's look at the color analysis where it matches the color, in this case black. So then it's pulling that value. And as long as it's above 25, it pulls it. And then it also sorts it, so the highest values are first. And again, it works very much the same way on a normal sort function. If the color is present, it's going to do the logic. There is no color state. It's just going to return 1, so everything is just left in that same order. The order is basically unchanged. And otherwise, B minus A, and that's how you get 100 in a descending, that's how you get a descending sort, essentially. And then the products are just mapping over the data, and yeah, you get your relative path. It's just a simple image, and I'm showing the value of the color. So if you want to step it up to the level with the sliders and everything, you just have to do a little more advanced logic. This is a pretty basic implementation of the logic, but it shows you what can be done with this color tool. And I hope you build something cool with it. Have a good one.